I stopped taking birth control pills to get pregnant by my husband because he wanted to leave me. I didn't want to get divorced because we had been together for a short time and he was going to leave me with almost nothing. When I got pregnant, he told me he secretly had a vasectomy 2 months ago. Now I don't know what to do. My marriage to Robert, my husband, was never meant to be some mundane, middle-class love story filled with coupon clipping and pedestrian compromise. It was a perfectly calculated strategic upgrade designed to elevate my social standing to the absolute pinnacle where I naturally belong. Robert owns a massive logistics empire that basically moves half the luxury goods across the continent, which meant I was destined for his multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the city's skyline. I was never built for a vulgar middle-class suburb, as the very thought of vinyl siding and tract housing gives me actual hives. For the first year and a half, our life together was an exquisite showcase of curated elegance and high society galas. I fulfilled my role as an elite wife flawlessly, transforming his sterile living space into a haven of high-end design and immaculate social prestige. However, men like Robert can be incredibly ungrateful and easily distracted by the petty stresses of their corporate domains. Out of nowhere, he abruptly announced during a perfectly catered breakfast that he wanted a divorce, citing some absurd, unrefined excuse about a lack of emotional connection. I immediately went to my dressing room, pulled out our prenuptial agreement, and felt an absolute wave of panic wash over me. Because we had been married for under 2 years, the legal payout clause was utterly insulting and wouldn't even cover a single year of my basic luxury lifestyle maintenance. The thought of losing access to the exclusive rooftop pool and my personal chauffeur was genuinely sickening. The prospect of being cast out into the realm of ordinary, budgeting citizens was completely unacceptable to someone of my pedigree. I realized that if the legal system wasn't going to protect my rightful place in high society, I would have to take matters into my own hands through reproductive leverage. A child with Robert would serve as a permanent financial anchor, ensuring that his vast logistics empire would remain permanently tethered to my bank account. It was a perfectly logical and elegant solution to a crisis that was entirely caused by his sudden, irrational emotional instability. No one could expect me to simply walk away from a multi-million-dollar estate with pennies just because Robert had a temporary midlife crisis. That very afternoon, I took my premium imported birth control pills and deliberately tossed them into the absolute bottom of my plush, green velvet jewelry box. I concealed the empty spaces in the blister packs beneath my diamond tennis bracelets and custom emerald sets so no domestic staff would ever notice. I then initiated an incredibly active and deliberate intimate life with Robert, utilizing every ounce of my charm to ensure there were no missed opportunities. He seemed completely oblivious to the strategic shift, naively assuming my sudden warmth was just a desperate attempt to patch up our interpersonal differences. I endured those tedious, uninspired encounters with the stoic grace of a woman who knows exactly what her womb is worth on the open market. Last week, my meticulous patience finally paid off when my early detection digital pregnancy monitor flashed a beautiful, undeniable positive symbol. I immediately arranged an exquisite, candlelit dinner in our formal dining room, selecting a vintage champagne that perfectly matched the gravity of the occasion. When the main course was served, I elegantly slid the digital monitor across the pristine linen tablecloth directly toward Robert. I sat back with a triumphant smile, fully expecting him to instantly capitulate and withdraw the divorce petition to save his precious public family image. High society men will tolerate a lot of private misery, but they absolutely refuse to let the country club crowd witness a messy, pregnant separation. Instead of the pale, panicked submission I had perfectly anticipated, Robert didn't even drop his silver fork. He calmly took a slow, deliberate sip of his vintage red wine, wiped his mouth with a silk napkin, and smiled at me with a terrifyingly serene expression. He looked me dead in the eye and softly informed me that he had undergone a secret, permanent vasectomy exactly 2 months ago. My entire body froze as the words echoed through the high-ceilinged dining room, shattering my carefully constructed illusion of financial safety. The sheer audacity of him altering his reproductive biology behind my back felt like a direct, malicious sabotage of my legitimate marital rights. The immediate medical impossibility of the situation triggered a sickening realization about a minor, calculated contingency plan I had executed a few weeks prior. During a brief, highly stressful weekend separation where Robert had banished himself to a luxury resort, I had taken matters into my own hands to secure an alternative high-status backup option. I arranged a highly discreet, calculated encounter with Julian, an old money acquaintance who boasts an inheritance that rivals Robert's entire empire. My intention was never to commit a vulgar act of infidelity, but rather to ensure I had an immediate safety net should Robert's legal team prove too aggressive. Julian represented pedigree, ancient wealth, and a perfectly acceptable secondary lifestyle upgrade if my primary marriage collapsed. I had fully intended to pass the resulting child off as Robert's legal heir, effortlessly blending the timelines to secure the penthouse and a permanent stream of child support. Now, Robert's secret medical timeline completely weaponizes my brilliant financial safety net into an undeniable, mathematical proof of absolute infidelity. The sheer bad luck of his covert urological procedure has turned a flawless asset protection strategy into a total legal trap. I am stuck staring at a positive test that should have been my golden ticket, but is now a radioactive piece of evidence. It is completely unfair how a woman's genuine attempt to preserve her social standing can be derailed by a man's deceptive medical secrets. The dinner ended in absolute, freezing silence as Robert stood up, adjusted his designer suit jacket, and walked out without saying another word. Within an hour, his elite legal team had already sent an urgent notification to my personal email, demanding a full explanation for the positive test. I locked myself in the master suite, staring at the marble walls and realizing how quickly my entire carefully curated world was starting to fracture at the seams. Robert's refusal to even discuss the matter or show a shred of upper-class decorum proves just how vindictive he truly is beneath his polished exterior. He is deliberately using a technicality to humiliate the woman who elevated his social circle for nearly 2 years. I refuse to let these ungrateful men view me as the villain when I was simply navigating an incredibly hostile prenuptial environment. Robert's reaction is an absurd, completely exaggerated display of fragile male ego that ignores the systemic difficulties high society women face. If he hadn't tried to leave me with absolutely nothing after I dedicated my time to his public image, none of this would have ever been necessary. Julian's involvement was merely an unfortunate byproduct of Robert's initial rejection, a necessary business move that any rational woman would make. Now, I am left to deal with the fallout of their combined selfishness while trying to protect my rightful place at the top. The sheer stress of this mathematical discrepancy is starting to affect my complexion, which is the ultimate tragedy in this entire sordid affair. I am currently consulting with elite brand consultants to see how I can manage the optics of this situation before the rumor mill begins to spin. A woman of my stature should never be forced to explain the intricate logistics of her financial survival to a husband who lacks basic corporate foresight. I will find a way to navigate this administrative oversight, because returning to the world of ordinary budgets is simply not an option for me. My lawyers are already drafting a comprehensive response that will shift the narrative back to Robert's deceitful medical decisions. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says imagine treating your own womb like a high-risk hedge fund and then getting mad when the market crashes. You didn't want a family, you wanted a permanent corporate sponsorship with a penthouse view. OP's reply: high society preservation requires financial foresight and strategic asset management, which ordinary people clearly fail to comprehend. Protecting one's rightful lifestyle from an ungrateful spouse is a necessity, not a commodity. Anonymous user 2 says the medical math here is absolutely brutal for you. You tried to double dip with a backup plan and ended up handing your husband a certified receipt of your own cheating. OP's reply: vasectomies notoriously have a documented failure rate in premium medical journals, and I will be completely vindicated once the proper administrative reviews are conducted. Robert's deceptive timeline is the real anomaly here. Update 1. It's been 3 days since my last update, and the sheer lack of class in Robert's behavior has escalated to an absolutely unconscionable level. After that disastrous dinner, my husband completely abandoned our marital bed and moved all his belongings into the distant guest wing of the penthouse. He is treating our shared luxury residence like a divided corporate headquarters, which is incredibly tacky and disruptive to our household staff. To make matters worse, he instructed his personal accountant to officially freeze our joint platinum cards without even giving me a courteous 24-hour notice. I only discovered this financial sabotage when my premier personal shopper called to inform me that my seasonal wardrobe curation had been declined. Instead of my standard unlimited luxury access, I have been left with a humiliatingly low monthly allowance meant only for basic groceries. The exact amount is an absolute insult, barely matching what a common middle-class family spends on their weekly sustenance. I feel completely degraded shopping at standard supermarkets where people actually look at price tags and buy generic brands. Walking down those brightly lit aisles surrounded by unrefined, ordinary citizens is an experience that genuinely traumatizes my refined sensibilities. I had to personally push a vulgar metal cart because the store didn't even provide an attendant to manage the logistics of my provisioning. The sheer embarrassment of this grocery situation forced me to realize that I needed to activate my secondary high-status financial alliance immediately. I spent yesterday afternoon trying to quietly call Julian to inform him about the positive test results and see if he would back me up financially during this temporary legal dispute. After all, a man of his immense old money pedigree should understand the absolute necessity of maintaining a woman's premium societal presentation. I assumed he would view this as an opportunity to secure his connection to someone of my immaculate aesthetic standards. It was a perfectly reasonable and dignified request, given the upscale nature of our brief, calculated weekend encounter. However, the moment I mentioned the word pregnancy over the encrypted line, Julian completely panicked like an unrefined teenager rather than a seasoned aristocrat. He didn't even let me finish explaining my brilliant legal strategy before he abruptly hung up the phone and entirely blocked my premium number. It turns out he cares far too much about his family's fragile country club reputation to get involved in what his lawyers would consider a vulgar paternity scandal. His immediate instinct was to protect his inheritance rather than support the high society woman who had graced him with her exclusive attention. His cowardice is a shocking testament to how shallow the elite male elite can be when actual responsibility threatens their leisure. Left with no immediate financial cooperation from my backup option, I decided to redirect my strategic efforts back toward resolving the issue with Robert. I spent the late evening trying to convince him that his high-priced urologist must have utterly botched the vasectomy procedure 2 months ago. I even compiled a list of medical anomalies and statistical failure rates from premium global health journals to support my perfectly logical explanation. I brought the printouts to the guest wing door, demanding that he review the evidence of potential medical malpractice that had clearly occurred. It is a known scientific fact that even the most expensive surgeries can have unexpected, miraculous complications that defy standard mathematical timelines. Instead of engaging in a rational, high-level corporate discussion about this medical discrepancy, Robert just looked at me with absolute, sickening pity. He didn't even bother to read the luxury embossed folders I had prepared with such meticulous care. His silent, patronizing stare was an incredible display of unrefined arrogance that completely ignored my genuine efforts to find a harmonious resolution. He simply closed the door in my face, leaving me standing in the hallway with my evidence like a common solicitor. The complete lack of emotional intelligence in this penthouse is making the environment absolutely toxic for someone of my delicate disposition. I am completely convinced that Robert is colluding with his legal team to exaggerate this entire medical timeline just to avoid his financial obligations. It is highly convenient that he suddenly claims a secret medical procedure right when he wants to escape an ironclad lifestyle maintenance agreement. A truly classy gentleman would never use a urological technicality to starve his elegant wife of her rightful platinum privileges. He is deliberately trying to construct a narrative where my brilliant contingency plan looks like a standard transgression, which is a gross mischaracterization of my strategic foresight. My actions were entirely defensive, forced by his initial threat to cast me out into the middle-class wilderness. To make matters worse, the domestic staff is beginning to whisper among themselves, which is an absolute breach of their premium employment contracts. I can feel the housekeeper's judgmental gaze every time she cleans my green velvet jewelry box, where my diamond tennis bracelets still rest above the empty birth control slots. It is utterly disgusting how ordinary workers feel entitled to form opinions on the complex asset management strategies of their superiors. I am seriously considering terminating her contract, but Robert's financial freeze means I cannot even authorize a proper severance package for a replacement. This artificial scarcity is a deliberate tactic to grind down my immaculate spirit and force me into submission. I refuse to let this temporary reduction in my platinum allowance define my actual net worth or my ultimate standing in this city. I am already planning to host a discreet luncheon with a few select luxury brand ambassadors to see if I can leverage my influence for direct sponsorships. A woman with my face and social pedigree does not simply disappear from the elite register because her husband undergoes a covert surgery. Robert may control the immediate logistics empire, but he cannot control the inherent magnetic pull of my high society presence. I will continue to navigate this minor administrative setback with the unyielding dignity that my class demands. Tomorrow, I intend to schedule an urgent consultation with a top-tier media consultant to ensure that my public narrative remains completely pristine throughout this absurd ordeal. If Robert thinks he can quietly starve me out in the guest wing while I am forced to shop at ordinary supermarkets, he is severely underestimating my strategic resolve. The baby inside me represents a high-status legacy, and I will ensure that either the logistics empire or the old money trust funds pay for its premium upbringing. This entire situation is merely a test of my elite endurance, and I am fully prepared to show these ungrateful men exactly what happens when you cross a woman of true distinction. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "Oh no. Not the standard supermarket. How terrible that you have to breathe the same air as people who actually work for a living while your platinum cards are frozen. OP's reply: you clearly do not understand the exorbitant cost and logistical effort required to maintain high-end appearances in our social register. Being forced into unrefined retail environments is a deliberate attempt to degrade my inherent standing. Anonymous user 2 says, did you seriously think a country club trust fund guy like Julian was going to fund your messy divorce drama? Low-tier elite men protect their family assets before anything else. OP's reply: Julian is merely acting out of temporary stress due to the aggressive nature of his family's corporate advisors. Once the initial shock subsides, he will recognize that aligning with my immaculate pedigree is a superior long-term strategy. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and the minor administrative dispute has officially escalated into an absolute social nightmare of epic proportions. The absolute worst kind of plebeian coincidence occurred when I discovered that Robert's primary urologist happens to be the biological uncle of one of my main rivals on the exclusive charity gala committee. That wretched woman has always envied my immaculate taste and my rapid ascension into the penthouse elite of this city. Naturally, because unrefined people have zero professional ethics, the top-secret details regarding Robert's vasectomy and my miraculous pregnancy have already started leaking directly into our innermost social circle. I can almost hear the frantic whispering through the phone lines every time I try to RSVP to an upcoming high society event. The immediate consequence of this vulgar leak was delivered yesterday morning in the form of a formal divorce petition based entirely on alleged adultery. Robert's legal team is acting with a savage, unrefined aggression that completely disregards the delicate nature of my high-status public profile. To make matters infinitely worse, Robert is demanding a full, non-invasive prenatal paternity test before any temporary lifestyle maintenance or monthly allowance is officially set by the court. If I refuse to submit to this invasive medical interrogation, the family court judge will automatically rule entirely in his favor by default, which is an absolute mockery of blind justice. I am being cornered by a legal system that apparently favors deceptive medical timelines over a wife's right to financial security. The alternative choice is equally catastrophic because if I agree to the test, the laboratory results will officially and undeniably name Julian as the biological father. This would completely destroy my immaculate standing on the charity gala committee and instantly nullify any remaining legal claim to Robert's massive logistics fortune. I am caught in a vulgar, mathematical pincer movement designed by low-vibrational minds to strip me of my rightful luxury maintenance. The sheer anxiety of this dilemma is forcing me to consume premium organic teas just to maintain my skin's youthful elasticity under such hostile conditions. It is entirely unfair that a woman's brilliant backup plan can be weaponized against her by a bunch of expensive DNA machines. I spent the afternoon locked in my private dressing room, reviewing the legal documentation with an expensive defense attorney who seems entirely too realistic for my liking. He kept using common, unrefined words like evidence and perjury, completely failing to understand the higher strategic context of my actions. I had to explicitly remind him that I am an elite client who expects creative narrative solutions, not pedestrian recitations of family law statutes. He simply sighed and informed me that judges in this jurisdiction are notoriously unimpressed by high society titles or velvet jewelry boxes. His complete lack of aspirational enthusiasm was deeply offensive, and I am already looking into retaining a far more glamorous legal firm. Meanwhile, the snide text messages from the charity gala committee members have become absolutely intolerable to someone of my refined sensibilities. They are sending me faux sympathetic articles about miracle babies and unexpected medical anomalies, which is a transparently passive-aggressive attempt to mock my current logistical predicament. These women are completely beneath me, possessing neither my natural bone structure nor my innate capacity for high-stakes financial maneuvers. They are simply celebrating because they think they finally have an opportunity to remove me from my rightful seat at the head of the planning table. I refuse to give them the satisfaction of seeing me sweat, even if my joint platinum cards remain completely frozen. I tried to send a formal cease and desist letter to Robert's urologist for violating premium medical confidentiality, but his elite medical practice simply ignored my high society warning. It is truly shocking how the traditional institutions of this city are failing to protect the privacy of its most distinguished citizens. Robert is clearly funding this entire smear campaign from his logistics empire accounts, using his vast capital to isolate me from my peers. He wants to reduce me to the level of a common suburban housewife who has to explain her personal life to strangers. I will never allow myself to be minimized by his vindictive, low-class legal tactics. The baby is growing inside me, and despite the absolute social chaos surrounding its lineage, it remains a premium asset that deserves an immaculate lifestyle. I refuse to let the unrefined math of a urological procedure dictate the quality of the nursery or the pedigree of the private tutors I intend to retain. If Robert thinks a DNA test is going to make me surrender my claim to the penthouse, he is completely delusional about my elite resilience. I am currently drafting a comprehensive public relations counter-strategy that reframes the entire paternity question as an intimate, spiritual mystery that is far above the comprehension of standard laboratory technicians. I have also attempted to re-establish contact with Julian through several mutual high society acquaintances, but the entire old money network has closed its ranks against me. It seems they are far more concerned with protecting their precious country club image than defending a woman of true aesthetic value. Julian's absolute silence is a pathetic display of upper-class cowardice that makes me question the actual quality of his pedigree. A real aristocrat would have stepped forward with an elite team of fixers to manage the optics and ensure my financial comfort. Instead, he is hiding behind his family's ancient trusts like a frightened child. The level of stress in this penthouse is becoming completely detrimental to my overall well-being, and Robert's continued presence in the guest wing is an absolute nuisance. He walks through the common areas with an insufferable air of unearned victory, as if a secret vasectomy makes him some sort of corporate genius. He completely forgets that it was my immaculate curation that made his sterile logistics fortune look like actual high society in the first place. Without my guidance, he will inevitably revert to the unrefined habits of his self-made engineering background. I am the true value creator in this marriage, and the court needs to recognize that asset management extends far beyond simple biological matching. As the deadline to respond to the formal divorce petition rapidly approaches, I am preparing for a major strategic maneuver that will stun both Robert and his aggressive legal team. I will not be bullied into a common laboratory test without extracting a premium concession that guarantees my long-term lifestyle maintenance. If they want my DNA, they will have to pay an absolute fortune just to secure my cooperation in their vulgar medical theater. I remain the undisputed queen of this penthouse, and no amount of unrefined small-town urological gossip will ever change my inherent worth. This entire nightmare is simply a temporary dip in my social trajectory, and my ultimate ascension remains entirely guaranteed. Update 2 comments. Anonymous User 1 says it is hilarious how the Charity Gala Committee is passing around your drama like a hot potato. Your upper class of friends are absolutely destroying you behind your back. OP's reply: those jealous women are completely insignificant and are simply using this temporary administrative delay to mask their own lack of initial leverage. They know that my innate aesthetic superiority will always overshadow their mediocre committee contributions. Anonymous User 2 says, if you're so confident that the urologist botched the surgery, why are you fighting the prenatal DNA test so hard? A confident wife would just take the test and prove it. OP's reply: I am strictly protecting the unborn high-status heir from the unnecessary stress and unrefined risks of medical needles. Clinical environments are highly clinical and vulgar, and my child's premium development takes absolute priority over Robert's paranoia. Update 3. It's been 1 month since my last update, and I am absolutely forced to report that the unrefined mechanisms of the legal system have completely overridden my superior strategic maneuvers. Despite my brilliant public relations counter-strategy and my demands for premium concessions, my legal options completely ran out under the relentless pressure of Robert's multi-million-dollar corporate attorneys. I was ultimately forced to submit to the non-invasive prenatal paternity test because the alternative default judgment would have stripped me of my penthouse instantly. The highly sterile lab technicians treated me like a common outpatient, completely ignoring my demands for a private waiting area away from the standard clientele. The absolute humiliation of having my blood drawn for a vulgar mathematical verification was almost too much for my refined nervous system to bear. The definitive laboratory results came back yesterday afternoon, and they have delivered an absolute, unmitigated blow to my high society future. The formal documents confirmed a devastating 0% probability of biological compatibility between the unborn heir and Robert, my husband. Instead, the high-priced clinical printout officially and undeniably confirmed that Julian is the biological father of the child. This flawless piece of medical math has completely shattered my primary strategy of passing the baby off as Robert's legal successor to secure the logistics empire fortune. It is truly sickening how a single clinical percentage point can completely dismantle a woman's perfectly orchestrated financial safety net. However, the cruelest and most unrefined twist of this entire narrative occurred within the exclusive ranks of the old money network itself. Julian's insufferable mother somehow found out about the precise laboratory results through the hyperactive country club gossip network before I could even draft a curated statement. That heartless matriarch immediately forced her weak-willed son to sign an emergency amendment to his multi-generational family trust fund. The new ironclad clause explicitly ensures that if Julian ever recognizes a child born from a scandalous public affair, he will be completely and permanently cut off from his massive inheritance. It is a disgusting display of ancient wealth using financial starvation to protect their fragile aristocratic reputation from an outsider of immaculate taste. Following his complete financial castration by his mother, Julian sent me a brief, pathetic email through a generic, unrefined account that he clearly created just for this cowardly purpose. The message was incredibly cold and devoid of any high society decorum, explicitly telling me to never contact him or his family ever again. He didn't even offer a single dollar of temporary maintenance or a baseline allowance for the premium prenatal care that his child rightfully requires. He has completely abandoned his high-status backup obligations to hide behind his mother's diamond-encrusted skirts like an absolute plebeian. His total collapse under pressure proves that old money doesn't automatically guarantee true aristocratic character or basic financial chivalry. Now, I am left standing in the master suite of a penthouse that feels increasingly hostile, surrounded by premium furniture that I may soon be forced to leave behind. Robert's legal team is already celebrating this mathematical confirmation of adultery as if they have won some grand corporate merger. They are completely ignoring the fact that my strategic actions were entirely necessitated by Robert's initial, unprovoked announcement of divorce. A truly sophisticated husband would understand that a high-society wife requires an alternative asset protection plan when her primary maintenance is suddenly threatened. Instead, he is using this clinical data to portray himself as a victim of common infidelity, which is a gross distortion of the elite reality. The Charity Gala Committee has officially revoked my premium membership, sending a cold, automated email that didn't even include a personalized signature from the chairperson. Those envious, middle-brow women are undoubtedly popping cheap champagne over my current logistical difficulties, thrilled to finally remove my superior presence from their social register. They lack the vision to see that I was the sole element providing actual glamour to their mundane philanthropic events. To reduce my entire elite identity to the results of a prenatal blood test is a testament to the absolute shallow nature of this city's pseudo-aristocracy. They will inevitably realize their mistake when their upcoming galas turn into unrefined, poorly styled disasters without my immaculate curation. I have spent the last 24 hours screaming at my legal team, demanding that they find a structural loophole in the prenuptial agreement that bypasses the DNA results entirely. I suggested arguing that the secret vasectomy constituted a fraudulent concealment of marital assets, which should logically invalidate any subsequent adultery clauses. My lawyers, however, just stared at me with that same unrefined exhaustion, claiming that the math is simply too clean for any judge to overlook. It is infuriating how the legal profession prioritizes rigid percentages over the nuanced lifestyle requirements of a woman of my stature. They are completely useless, and I am seriously considering refusing to pay their final premium invoice out of pure principle. The sheer lack of empathy from the entire community is an absolute stain on the concept of high society. No one seems to care about the intense psychological toll this administrative collapse is taking on my delicate physical well-being. I am being forced to contemplate a future without my personal stylist or my unlimited access to luxury resort weekends, which is an existential crisis of the highest order. The child inside me deserves to be swaddled in premium cashmere, not subjected to the vulgar constraints of a common budget. I am surrounded by heartless aristocrats and ungrateful self-made millionaires who care more about their trust fund amendments than human dignity. I still look in the mirror and see a woman who belongs exclusively in a multi-million-dollar penthouse, regardless of what the laboratory paperwork says. My bone structure and innate elegance cannot be nullified by a 0% compatibility score on a clinical report. Robert may think he has successfully executed a perfect legal eviction, but he will never be able to erase the high society standards I instilled into his sterile life. He will return to his unrefined logistics spreadsheets, and Julian will remain a captive of his mother's country club parameters. I am the only true free spirit in this entire sordid affair, even if my financial leverage has temporarily evaporated. I am currently packing my most essential luxury items into my designer luggage, ensuring that my green velvet jewelry box is securely placed at the very top. I refuse to leave my diamond tennis bracelets or my custom emerald sets for Robert's unrefined future companions to inherit. This apartment may be freezing cold, but my determination to reclaim my rightful place at the absolute pinnacle of society remains completely burning. I will find a way to navigate this structural crisis, because a life spent among ordinary, budget-conscious citizens is a fate that I simply refuse to accept. The narrative is not over, and I will ensure that the final chapter of this high society drama is written entirely on my own premium terms. Update 3 comments. Anonymous User 1 says a perfect 0% compatibility with your husband. You wanted mathematical proof of your financial safety net, and instead, the lab gave you absolute poetic justice. OP's reply: this entire community possesses an absolute lack of empathy for a distinguished woman who was simply trying to secure her future against a hostile legal document. Reducing a complex marital asset strategy to a sterile percentage is incredibly short-sighted. Anonymous user 2 says Julian's mother playing the trust fund amendment card is the ultimate old money move. They don't play around when it comes to keeping outsiders away from the family fortune. OP's reply: they are all heartless aristocrats who value their artificial country club parameters over actual human obligation and high-status legacy. Forcing a son to sign away his responsibilities is a disgusting display of generational greed that I completely despise. Update 4. It's been 2 months since my last update, and the absolute collapse of my high society existence has officially been finalized with a devastating, unrefined speed. The family court judge, who possessed the drab appearance of a common civil servant, finalized the divorce in record time under the strict adultery clause. Due to the ironclad nature of the prenuptial agreement and the undeniable DNA proof from the prenatal test, the ruling was an absolute slaughter of my financial rights. I received absolutely zero alimony, no share of Robert's massive logistics empire property, and was given a humiliatingly brief 48 hours to vacate the penthouse entirely. The legal system has officially stripped me of every single luxury privilege I spent years cultivating, completely ignoring my baseline lifestyle maintenance requirements. I am currently living in a cramped, ordinary apartment located in a depressing district that I wouldn't have even driven through in my previous life. The residence features a hideous laminate kitchen that genuinely disgusts me every single time I am forced to look at its cheap, synthetic surfaces. There is no concierge at the front desk, no secure underground parking for a premium vehicle, and the neighbors possess the look of standard, wage-earning citizens. Walking across the linoleum floors feels like an absolute betrayal of my refined soles, which were meant exclusively for imported Italian marble. The sheer aesthetic deprivation of this space is a daily trauma that I am forced to endure with absolutely no immediate alternative. My once overflowing green velvet jewelry box sits on a cheap particle board dresser, looking completely out of place in this pedestrian environment. It is now completely empty, except for the discarded birth control blisters that still rest at the absolute bottom as a bitter reminder of my failed strategy. I was forced to liquidate every single diamond tennis bracelet and custom emerald set just to afford the exorbitant deposit and the first few months of rent for this miserable dwelling. The very assets I used to conceal my brilliant reproductive leverage have been consumed by the vulgar logistics of basic survival. It is an absolute tragedy that my premium curation had to be sold to common pawnshops for a fraction of its true high society value. The exact strategy one devised to permanently anchor myself to a multi-million-dollar estate became the precise medical evidence that stripped me of my luxury, my status, and my future. By attempting to secure my financial safety net through reproductive leverage, I inadvertently provided Robert with the exact clinical data he needed to invalidate the prenuptial protections. If I had never stopped taking those premium birth control pills, I would have at least walked away with the baseline separation payout after the 2-year mark. My own meticulous planning was completely turned against me by the sheer bad luck of Robert's secret urological procedure and Julian's old money trust amendments. I am caught in the bitter realization that my pursuit of the ultimate lifestyle upgrade has resulted in a total displacement from society. I am completely broke, heavily pregnant with a child that carries zero legal claims to any fortune, and utterly terrified of what the future holds for someone of my delicate disposition. My premium health insurance has been entirely cancelled by Robert's corporate office, meaning I will likely have to give birth in a common public hospital surrounded by ordinary families. The thought of bringing a child into a world of laminate kitchens and budget grocery shopping is an absolute nightmare that keeps me awake every single night. I have no high-status allies left to call, as the entire country club network has completely erased my name from their memory. I am entirely alone in this pedestrian wilderness, stripped of the elite identity that was my entire lifeblood. Looking back at the sequence of events, a deep, uncomfortable bitterness washes over me as I realize how completely I miscalculated the cold reality of the financial elite. I truly believed that my aesthetic value and high society presence made me completely untouchable, forcing men like Robert and Julian to always bend to my parameters. I treated the concept of family and motherhood as a mere corporate spreadsheet, a leverage point to be manipulated for lifestyle maintenance and premium upgrades. Now, the math has exposed the absolute emptiness of that strategy, leaving me with a real, growing child and absolutely no capital to sustain it. The superficial pride that once defined my every decision now feels like a heavy, suffocating weight in this tiny apartment. I cannot even afford the premium organic skincare that used to protect my complexion from the harsh realities of stress, and the physical toll is becoming undeniably visible in the cheap bathroom mirror. Every line on my face reminds me of the penthouse I lost and the calculated weekend encounter that turned into my ultimate legal undoing. Robert is likely already redecorating the master suite to erase any trace of my immaculate curation, replacing it with his own unrefined preferences. Julian is undoubtedly playing tennis at the country club, completely secure in his inheritance because he chose to abandon his own flesh and blood to please his mother. They have both moved on within their spheres of immense wealth, while I am left to navigate the vulgar constraints of poverty. The child inside me kicks frequently, and instead of feeling the triumphant joy of an elite mother securing a dynasty, I feel a sickening wave of genuine panic. This baby will not grow up with a personal chauffeur, private tutors, or seasonal trips to European luxury resorts. It will grow up surrounded by the standard, budgeting realities that I have spent my entire adult life trying to escape. The absolute irony of my financial safety net becoming the instrument of my total ruin is a thought that repeats like a broken record in my mind. I am forced to accept that my shameless pursuit of status has rendered me completely destitute and socially extinct. I tried to open the empty velvet jewelry box today, hoping to find some small piece of overlooked gold, but there was nothing but the crinkling plastic of the birth control blisters. Those empty slots represent the exact moment I chose to gamble my future on a deceptive reproductive strategy, believing I could outsmart the legal mechanisms of the wealthy. I was so blinded by the fear of losing my luxury lifestyle maintenance that I walked directly into an obvious medical and legal trap. There is no premium public relations firm that can spin this disaster, and there is no miracle legal loophole waiting to save me at the last minute. I am completely reduced to the level of the ordinary people I spent my entire life looking down upon with such intense disdain. As the sun sets over the ordinary, noisy street below my window, the reality of my absolute isolation becomes impossible to ignore or deny. I have no fortune, no status, no high society title, and no safety net to catch me as the due date rapidly approaches. The elite world I belonged in has closed its gates permanently, leaving me to survive in a mundane reality that disgusts my very soul. I am utterly terrified of the ordinary life that stretches out before me, a life defined by budgeting, laminate counters, and the permanent absence of luxury. This is the bitter, unvarnished end of my strategic upgrade, and I am left with nothing but the terrifying weight of my own disastrous calculations.